It's not in the face! Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Hey Not the Face with your host John Nash and your producer me, Steffi Haynes. And today we are going to talk about DAZN and Matchroom primarily. We are going to weigh in on the Conor McGregor suspension situation, and we even have a little bit of stuff on PFL at the very end. But if you want access to all of those good things, you must subscribe with your money. You must get a paid subscription so that you have access to everything, because as you all know, we do put about half of the show behind a paywall. Now, John, how the heck are how the heck are you?
Well, sound better than you, apparently. It looks like you're dying over there. No. But I'm good. My older brother is in town visiting on his way back from Minnesota to Hawaii, where he lives. And so I'm missing the football game to do this show for you, the people. He's in the other room watching it, and he might get very loud. And I am stuck here with Isla because my cat despises him.
So John is making a sacrifice, and I am too, because I've been a little bit under the weather with a sinus infection / head cold or something like that. So I might be sniffling or coughing a little bit during the show. I apologize in advance, but I did do a little steam therapy beforehand with some Vicks vapor rubs, not the vapor rub, but the vapor steam thingy. So hopefully I've alleviated a good bit of that, whatever might have happened in this show. So hopefully that will be under control. So we're going to jump right in. And our first topic of the day is Conor McGregor, because it was announced by the UFC that Conor McGregor would be retroactively suspended for 18 months starting last September of 2024, not this one that just went by. Now, do you have any thoughts or find anything suspicious about this announcement or the duration of this suspension, since it was compacted and whittled down to 18 months?
Well, I mean, I find it interesting. One, it was technically, it wasn't the UFC, it was their anti-doping program, the Combat Sports Anti-Doping, what's CSAD or CSAD, however they want to pronounce that. They made the announcement. And what's kind of interesting, you got to go back 2 years ago. Remember, they were with USADA, and they had a split with USADA. And USADA complained that the UFC, one of the reasons they want to get rid of USADA was because USADA was going to make sure that McGregor had the 6-month period of testing before he could compete. And the UFC denied that and said that, they threatened to sue USADA. And then on top of that, the UFC said that one of the problems they had with USADA is that they when people just had a test and they haven't confirmed it yet, they released the information, making them look bad. So lo and behold, here we are. And McGregor missed 3 appointments under the new UFC program. And the most interesting one is his suspension, not a suspension, but his first missed date was on I can't remember the exact, sometime in June or whatever. I guess the exact date it happened. I think June 13th was the day he missed it. And the timeline they state is that I believe was the day after he had informed the UFC that he was injured and was unable to fight. I believe that's what they're going with. And so he missed that date, and then he was off the card and was, I don't know, training or whatever, or not training, in recovering from injury, and then missed 2 more dates in September. And at that point, they had a suspension, which they've only now conveniently announced now. But I guess that goes with the new program, because the new program's idea was under the UFC is they will not announce suspensions right away until there's been kind of a process. So all that to say is it's Conor McGregor in the news again for something that's probably not fight related. And on top of that, I forgot one other detail. Remember, he made an announcement just the other day that he's going to go off social media. So was his reason for going off social media to get ready for this White House card, or was it because he knew this story was going to pop up and he didn't want to have to talk about it? So just a lot of stuff that suggests other possibilities. We could put on our tinfoil hat and go nuts with this, but I'm going to throw it back to you, Stephanie. What do you think about this chain of events? Does anything pop up in your head when you hear the way this played out?
Yes. First and foremost is that they whittled this down from 24 months because he, quote, cooperated fully with the investigation into his missed appointments. And I don't even know that it was missed appointments so much as his whereabouts were unknown whenever they were to show up, because I don't think they do it by appointment. I think they just sort of show up, and you're supposed to give your whereabouts. You're supposed to always give your whereabouts, especially if you're going out of town or doing this or doing that. At least that's how it used to be. But the point I'm making is that cooperated fully and completely seems a little bit performative to me, and almost like UFC is using this as a little bit of giving him a redemption arc. And I just cannot shake that feeling. And then the other thing is, I wanted to ask you something. Since that first one was either the day before or the day after he pulled out of UFC 303 with that pinky toe injury, would it be fair to assume, if we're going to lay out all the possibilities, we need to lay out the ones that might actually not be beneficial to him, but might give him the benefit of the doubt? And that would it be fair to say that he may have been seeking treatment for his toe with some doctor or something on the fly and didn't let anybody know that he wasn't going to be home or wasn't going to be here or there or wherever? Would it be fair to assume that that could have been a possibility?
I mean, I think the fairest assumption, though, is if he did hurt his toe and he did know he's not going to compete, knowing Conor McGregor, I think it's fair to say he went on a bender and didn't report where he's going to be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you were, let's just say that's true, the timeline's correct, and he told them at that point, I guess if you want to put on your tinfoil hat, you could also say that he missed the test, and at that point they called off the fight. But we have no evidence of that. That's just, that's if people want to jump to that logic, that conclusion. But the other possibility is he hurt his toe, and then he was pissed that he couldn't fight. Told him he can't fight, and then just was not available because he was out, who knows, walking through the woods, bitter about his problems he was having. And I think that's, a fair read as well. The part that just looks bad, not that it is, not that there's anything, malicious going on. It's that it's the UFC's own program suspended him, and he says he wants to fight on the White House, at the White House card. And so they shortened the sentence to 18 months, conveniently would let him fight, all because he complied, he was helpful. But it's like, what kind of assistance can you provide when all you have to do is tell them why you didn't show up for the tests?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not like you go above and beyond. So that part, again, put on the tinfoil hats, that's the part that's probably going to get people suspicious about the program, because it's like, well, it's very convenient that the suspension would be just in time for him to be done for the White House card if you really wanted to put him on the White House card. I will note, though, for all the concerns that USADA had about how the UFC was going to treat him, and some people might look at this and say it's confirmed, at the same time, they did not rush him back after USADA left. He still went through, I think, a 6-month program, because the card he was originally on was, well, maybe it wasn't 6 months. I'd have to look at the date. It was in June, July, about roughly 6 months, but still, it wasn't like they rushed him back in a few months. So their concerns might have been a little overblown from USADA.
Conor McGregor didn't have just one instance or two instances. He had 3 instances. So how helpful can you actually be when you got busted 3 times for doing the same thing over and over and over?
Well, technically, he didn't get busted 3 times. He missed his not his appointments. He didn't register with them or was unavailable 3 times, and third time's the strike. So that's 1 violation under him.
I see. Okay.
So I guess you'd look at it that way. He did 1 violation, but still, it's the part again. it doesn't mean they're really giving him special treatment, but the appearance of special treatment definitely looks like it's there.
Yeah,
although
for sure.
if you really wanted the appearance of special treatment, you wouldn't have suspended him at all. So I guess there's that as well.
Or maybe they're trying to make it look like, hey, Conor is obviously out here wilding out. Maybe we should make it look like we're punishing him, giving him some sort of slap on the wrist. I don't know. I just get this really hinky feeling about this whole situation. I can't help myself.
Understandable.
I also still don't think this man is going to fight again in the cage, in the octagon. I really don't. I don't care if it's for the White House card or not. I mean, I'll eat my shoe if he does. I just cannot see it. I feel like he has to talk himself up to even be in the conversation. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I mean, I don't say it's impossible, but maybe he gets his act together. Maybe he shows up because he just so badly wants to be on the card, but I would not bet on it. I'm with you mostly. I lay the odds very much like 99% chance he never, ever fights again. It's got to be a fluke situation where he ends up in the cage. Well, let me rephrase that. He fights again in the cage.
That's what I said in the octagon.
Word, I got to include that. I don't want to get caught sometime.
Yeah, might not. I don't want to say the cage because remember he stormed the cage a couple of years ago and was really mad at, I believe it was Mark Goddard, over one of his fighters that was fighting in Cage Warriors. He stormed the cage and he stopped just short of assaulting anyone the way that Sean Strickland did recently, but he did storm the cage. So I mean, we could see something crazy, some Sean Strickland-esque type thing, but I just don't see him ever fighting in a sanctioned fight again, at least not in the UFC.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I don't want to say it's 100% impossible that he'll ever show up again, that I guarantee he'll never fight again, but I almost guarantee he won't fight again.
How does this potentially impact his contract?
Well, okay, this is theorizing here because we do not have his contract. We've always assumed he has a sunset provision like other fighters because on UFC 229, he signed the contract right before then. This new contract, and all the contracts around that period had a sunset clause, a 5-year maximum to the contract. So we assume he had it because the purpose that they inserted that was for the antitrust case that was ongoing at the time. They didn't have the class action waivers. They weren't using those yet. So this was their means to break up the class. And so we assume he had that as well because it just doesn't make sense for him not to. Now, maybe he doesn't have a sunset clause, but again, we always assumed he did. So why wouldn't his contract be up now? He signed that in 2018. It's 2025. Around 2023, the contract should have been up. Well, in the contract, there is a provision. And in the provision is if you retire or withdraw from the UFC, basically retire, the contract freezes and a separate track starts for the sunset clause. That's 5 years as well. And so remember, he did technically retire after the Dustin Poirier fight. And the reason he probably did that was because he wanted to get on the juice to recover. He pretty much said so because they weren't testing him during that period. So really, he was under contract for 3 years. Then he dropped out, retired, technically, air quotes. And so that would have started a separate contract period. Then he says he's coming back, enters the pool again, but now we find out he was suspended. Guess what? Suspended is considered the same as retired. And so it is conceivable that he does have a sunset, and the only reason it hasn't ended is because he retired and has been suspended. And so he is going the maximum amount of time for both sunset periods before his contract could end. Now, we don't have evidence of that, but it does line up pretty much with what we know from other contracts and also with his behavior of dropping out of the UFC so he doesn't submit to testing and now being suspended.
Okay, I have a conspiracy theory here. Could the UFC have dropped the suspension on him to set up a new contract period?
I mean, theoretically they could. I don't know if they would, because the implications, the potential lawsuits and just the damage to their image and name and brand value would be tremendous if they did that. So but as a conspiracy theory, yes, it is conceivable they could do it. And that's always the concern when you control your own drug testing program.
He did the infraction. So, I mean, I feel like it's more than conceivable that they went ahead and punished him so that they have the paper trail to go ahead and enact that new contract period. I think it's way more than conceivable that is why we're seeing this.
I mean, that is possible. Anything's possible with these people.
All right, we are going to switch gears here because that new Muhammad Ali Act bill proposal, aka the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, has had some new updates to it. Some new sponsors or co-sponsors have signed on to this bill. Number one, who signed on to it? Are we talking about Republicans or are we talking about Democrats, and how many?
Well, we're talking about 3 new co-sponsors. All 3 are Democrats that signed on. So when we were talking before that it looked like in fact, I think just a little while ago, we were having this discussion that that it looked like it was going to be a very partisan bill, even though they were claiming it was nonpartisan, simply for the fact that everybody signing on as a co-sponsor was a Republican. Lo and behold, now maybe they listen to the show, but now they wheeled out a bunch of Democrats, and those Democrats are, if you want to know who they are, a Democrat from the Nevada 4th Congressional District, Stephen Horsford, Haley Stephen from the Michigan's 11th, and Shomari Figures from Alabama's 2nd. Those are the 3 new Democrats. That brings 8 co-sponsors total, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. So it's looking more bipartisan, more support. Now, it should be noted, when the Ali Expansion Act was introduced in just a month or so, or a 2-month period, I think, before they started planning hearings, they were up to like 58 co-sponsors. They had a tremendous amount of co-sponsors for that one. This is not moving nearly as fast, but there's other things going on in Congress. And also, I think, maybe they're not looking for as many co-sponsors.
I guess the most obvious question here is, do we think that the fix is in? Is it wrong to say that?
Well, it's conceivable that the fix is in, because, again, we also have the other interesting news is that the California State Athletic Commission is planning another meeting in just a few days next week. I can't remember the exact date.
Wait,
I think it's
wasn't supposed to be till December.
Yes, it was not supposed to be December. They're going to do a bunch of investigating in it. As Fred Garvin was key to point out, this does not sound like how deep dive investigation can you do, but instead they're going to have a meeting on October 15th next week. They're slipping in really quick. So if you're listening, look up on my Twitter page. You can look up on the Athletic Commission's meeting agenda. You can see a number if you want to call in and voice your opinion in support or against, based on your opinion. I'm guessing if you're listening to the show, you are against the new changes to the Professional Boxing Safety Act, which would impact the Muhammad Ali Professional Boxing Act, or Boxing Reform Act. We have too many bills now for boxing. I'm getting confused between all of them. But that's going to take place next week. So you have to wonder why they're doing this so quick. Is it, are they trying to get some support here? Because it looks like there might be hearings in November 5th based on that letter from to the commission that Andy Foster brought up at the last meeting that was written by Tom Brown, the promoter. So a lot of moving parts, but you have to think kind of the fix is in, because everybody's very confident that it's going to pass, at least the way they're operating. The one thing that, ironically, I guess the big hurdle might be the shutdown that currently happened that they've triggered, because when you do these kind of votes, most members of the Congress the House or the Senate, they don't read this shit. They have assistants who they're not paying right now. So they don't have people to go over this for them to find out if they should support it or not, just to get the process rolling. So that's one thing. The other thing is the Epstein case might come back and save them because Speaker Johnson doesn't want to come back into session, because then you have to swear in another Democrat, which would give them the number of votes they need between the handful of Republicans and all the Democrats to release the Epstein files. And he seems adamant about denying the release of those files. So in a bizarre way, if you do not want the changes to if you do not want this bill to go forward, you're kind of, I don't want to say it, you're kind of hoping that they keep denying vote on the Epstein case, because the thing that might save this bill is them denying the release on the Epstein files.
After this show, I will also have that number up there if you want to call in. As a matter of fact, I think John and I will both pin that to our pages so that if you want to participate in that, you can just go to one of our pages and look up the number. So I just want to put that out there. It's so important. The last time, John, tell them 45 minutes of comments.
Yes. Yeah. That wasn't even everybody that called in. There was people, they kind of gave up after the number of calls that they got from people that voiced their opinion. So if you have an opinion, let them hear, especially if you're in California. Especially, I know there is some amateur boxers I've seen on Twitter or other people in the boxing industry that have an interest in this. By all means, the fighters stuff should call. They should voice their, the order of it should be people in the industry, obviously, probably have the greatest say because it affects them the most, but then fans afterwards have a say.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to get into the meat and bones of this show for today, and that is DAZN and Matchroom. DAZN posted their most recent finances for the public. What did their finances reveal, John? Well,
their finances show that they generated $3.2 billion in revenue this year, so an increase in revenue. They brought down their losses. They're still losing money, although if you remember, DAZN did say that they're looking at this year would be the year that they would turn a corner and be profitable. Instead, they lost $800 million. So DAZN is still not a profitable enterprise. DAZN is not a very lucrative. I mean, it's still, of all the apps and stuff, it is not competing as much with the other major apps. It just is not finding its niche in there. It's kind of being dwarfed by them. But I guess the positive, it's increased its revenue from $2.9 billion last year to, I should say, $2.9 billion in 2023, since these were the finances for the year 2024. They increased it from $2.9 billion to $3.2 billion last year. And they really brought down their losses, but still the losses are almost $1 billion, and they continue to lose money. And we've said this for a while, I have a hard time seeing what the future of this product is. I think their thing is they think they can build it up enough. Maybe it can be acquired by an Apple or one of the other services. Maybe that's their eventual goal. But other than that, it's really hard to see a lucrative future in the current landscape as is.
My God, that's not just losing money. That's an all-out hemorrhage.
I mean,
yeah. That's hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, but it's better than before. But I mean, their projections now are they now project that they'll be up to $5 billion, I think, next year, which is, again, it's nice increases, but we're talking a fraction of what you see from the other big streamers.
Since they are a joint venture with Matchroom Boxing, what info did their filing give us about Matchroom Boxing USA? Because there's a whole bunch of different divisions of Matchroom. You should tell everybody about that, because Matchroom Boxing USA is different from other Matchroom, right?
Yeah, it gets confusing. What Matchroom Boxing USA LLC, we should note that, Matchroom Boxing USA LLC is a joint venture. That joint venture is owned by DAZN, which owns 40% of it. And then 60% of it is owned by Matchroom Boxing USA Limited, which is based in the UK. Matchroom Boxing USA Limited is a wholly owned subsidiary of Matchroom Boxing Limited, which is part of the whole Matchroom Boxing company based in the UK. That's the major company that, I guess, when we think about Matchroom Boxing, it is Matchroom Boxing Limited, which is part of Matchroom, the company, and they all kind of feed out of that. And then on top of that, Matchroom, or I should say DAZN and Matchroom, have another joint venture called Matchroom Boxing Global, but that is much smaller, same split. Matchroom owns 60%, DAZN owns 40%, but their revenue is pretty minute, so we don't have to get that much into it because they don't have that big of impact on the global scene. But Matchroom Boxing USA has a big impact, and especially on Matchroom, so it's probably worth discussing that. So if we want to get into their finances, it's interesting is what they announced is for Matchroom, we saw that their revenue, Matchroom Boxing USA, their revenue went up in 2023, the full year. They reported in US dollars, $41.8 million US dollars in revenue, and saw a profit of $4.4 million. Last year, this $41.8 million climbed up to $53.5 million, 12.7 million to be exact increase, and their profits were now $5.3 million. So that's an increase. That's nice, but interesting enough, their broadcast fees, the money they get from DAZN that pays as broadcast licensing fees into this Matchroom USA entity, decreased from $29.6 million in 2023 to $23.7 million last year. So Matchroom, the amount of money they're putting into it went down last year from the year before, from 2023 to 2024. I should say, not at DAZN, the amount of money they're putting into it, the amount of money they're paying for licensing fees went down, but the Matchroom USA entity saw an increase in revenue. So that probably is coming from sponsorship or coming from live gates, things like that.
What does that mean for the overall finances and the fitness of Matchroom Boxing?
That's a good question there. If we look at it now, we'll see that, again, as I said, 60% is owned by Matchroom. Now, we have Matchroom's finances too, because just as DAZN posted this with Company House UK, their finances, where we get this information from, every year Matchroom posts, not just Matchroom, but Matchroom Boxing posts their finances with Company House. And when we look at Matchroom Boxing, 60% of Matchroom USA does not go into Matchroom Boxing. The way their finances work for Matchroom Boxing in the UK is that we don't take the revenue from Match USA. We don't even take a percentage of it that's owned by Matchroom Boxing. What they do is they take the split, the amount that's paid out from Matchroom Boxing USA to Matchroom Boxing Limited in the UK, and then that profit from that shows up in Matchroom Boxing UK as part of their revenue. So just a small fraction, you're talking about like £1 million per year, would show up in the Matchroom Boxing, the parent company, as part of their revenue. So the total revenue being generated by Matchroom Boxing is actually much more than what we see from those Company House filings. And those Company House filings for Matchroom in 2024, we had 77.7 million pounds was reported for that year. Now, their year ends in the middle of the year. So we're talking about June 30th, 2024. For the previous 12 months, they had 77.7 million pounds, converted to dollars, just a little over $100 million. But if you take the 2024, it doesn't quite line up for Matchroom Boxing USA. That means the revenue was probably total revenue for the two entities was over $150 million.
Wow.
Now Matchroom Boxing in the UK, they had $11 million in profit. So that's a pretty good profit margin. That's 14%, very high. But you got to remember that they're seeing about 60% of the profits from Matchroom Boxing USA, which is $3.2 million that they get. And so their profit margin, when you add the two companies together, is much closer to I should say not 15%, much closer to less than 10% when you add it all together, around 10%. So it's still a profitable company, but not as incredibly profitable when you put all the entities together. The interesting thing, too, we should note, is that Matchroom's DAZN revenues and the parent company as well, Matchroom Boxing, in the one that's based in the UK, their revenues are down from the past. Matchroom Boxing USA, the DAZN partnership, it peaked out in 2019, the year they kind of launched it. That year, they saw revenues of $122 million and also saw profits of $17.8 million that year, or $17.9 million to be more specific. And big reason is because they had $170 million in broadcast fees paid by Matchroom or by DAZN that year. And so they were getting a lot more money from DAZN. There's also, in addition, a $22 million payment that they made on behalf of Matchroom. So really, DAZN was responsible for closer to $129 million in revenue that year. And so then so that's a tremendous year. Now you look over what's happened over time to those broadcast deals. Well, they were at, $177 million that year. Then COVID hit. They only got $58 million in licensing and broadcast fees from DAZN. Then after that, it went back up to $75.7 million. In 2022, it went up to $97.5 million. So almost totally recovered. And then the last 2 years, there's been a tremendous pivot, it looks like, based on this from broadcast fees. So they went from $97.5 million in broadcast and license fees for Matchroom USA from DAZN in 2022, 2023, just under $30 million. And then last year, 2024, $23.7 million.
Good Lord.
And so we are seeing, it looks like the trend seems to be a decrease in Matchroom's broadcast fee support for Matchroom Boxing USA. And so we are seeing, in some ways, we're also seeing a dip from 2023, where Matchroom made $100.9 million, last year only $77.7. Their revenue seems to be being replaced by the revenue that they get from the Saudis, from what they used to get from DAZN.
Well, I have a question for you on that. When they sold that 13% piece, would that come from just the Matchroom side, the part that they own, or would it be a little bit of both what they own and what DAZN owns? How would that work out? Well,
they sold 13% to a Qatari company, and I think they have the right to buy 20 more percent. That's they can come and get another 20, so they don't own a third if they do that. But that 13% is in Matchroom, which includes Matchroom Boxing. So they own 13% of Matchroom, which means they own 13% of Matchroom Boxing, which means of the 60% they own of Matchroom USA, the Qataris technically own 7.8% of that.
Okay.
So they own, they own a piece of every piece that Matchroom owns of stuff. So if they get to a third, they'll have a third, or they'll have 20%, I should say, of Matchroom Boxing USA. But we'll see what happens with that sale. The way Hearn talked about it, it does sound like that 20% might be a done deal.
Wow. Eddie was on Ariel Helwani's show recently, and he said that their contract together, his contract with DAZN, ends in 2026, but that he wanted to stay with them. Do you believe him? And if you do, why would he want to stay with DAZN when it seems like they're not doing so hot?
Well, I do kind of believe him, but I think the hint is that you look at everybody else, right? Everybody else is struggling to get deals in DAZN.
To access the bonus content of this episode, you must be a paid subscriber. To do that, go to heynottheface.substack.com and subscribe today.
Ow! Ow! Not the face! Ooh! Ooh! Okay, the face!